You are listening to the Critical Mass Radio Show, Orange County's business talk show, focused on exploring topics of interest to CEOs who are leading middle market companies. With your host, Richard Franzi.
Hello and welcome to Orange County's longest running business talk show. I am your host, Rick Franzi. We have a very interesting show planned for you. Why? Because Bill Edwards, who's the CEO of Edwards Global Services, has traveled the world, ladies and gentlemen, in his business capacity. And I'm here to talk about his entrepreneurial journey with him. Bill, welcome to the program.
Thank you very much, Rick. It's an honor to be here.
It's fun, and I look forward to talking with you. Let's start with your last 20 plus years, which you have been the CEO of Edwards Global Services. But I'm wondering, 20 plus years ago, what was your motivation to start this business?
Well, after more than 25 years in the corporate world, living in 7 different countries and working on projects in 50 across numerous business sectors as an operating executive, I just felt it was time for me to go out on my own and use that experience and knowledge to start a boutique international business development firm that uses very detailed processes to create global success for companies wanting to go global.
So when you were in that 25-year corporate experience, was there, how long did you think before you acted, hey, I might be able to do this for myself?
Well, it really took a long time because I was moving up the corporate ladder, and my plan was to become president of a very large Fortune 100 company or CEO. And in one of my last international assignments, I was the country president for the company in Turkey. And I had control over all aspects of starting from 1 employee to 400 in 2 years, operating a multi-sector business. And I realized that I really liked that startup part, but I really didn't like once it was started up, going and making it run. And so I was really an entrepreneur because I had also done a startup for the company in China and Alaska. And so I said, I think it's time for me to go and do my own thing because I've got a little tired of being told what to do from headquarters, quite honestly.
Right. Well, it's a combination of being told what to do, but also achieving sort of your goal, which was to be the boss, because you were the boss of that organization.
I was the boss. And it was a great training program, tremendous training program that gave me the knowledge and experience to know what worked and what didn't work.
And that's so valuable that we're speaking to other entrepreneurs. Maybe you're an entrepreneur in waiting and you haven't found that position, that opportunity that you want to give up your day job for. But you're learning so much even in that role if you approach it that way. You talk about being a startup. Being a startup inside of an organization that's funded is different than being a startup that you have to bootstrap. But nonetheless, the activities, other than the source of money that maybe keeps you going, right, Bill? You still have all the same opportunities and challenges.
Well, I think having the chance to start up operations for the company in 2 countries was really the point where I realized that I could put all the pieces together, starting from zero. Of course, there was a lot of money behind zero because it was a big company, but starting from zero operations and taking it to success, I really liked doing that and felt that it was gave up my idea of being the corporate CEO of a Fortune 100 company and became the corporate CEO of a really tiny company.
I had a similar entrepreneurial journey because my last corporate job, I was president of an operating division, and that's the job I always wanted to be. And then I was ready to launch and start my entrepreneurial career. One of the things I had to realize, the difference between those 2 experiences is the importance of cash flow when you're in an entrepreneurial venture versus a corporate venture. Do you agree?
Well, I do. I started my business to take small U.S. companies global 1 month before 9/11. So the first year was very light. Only 1 client was actually willing to think about going international because in those, after 9/11, you'll remember people were very inward looking and scared to do anything.
Right.
So, but But by year 7, we had a good stable of clients. And then in year 10, we got our opportunity to work with a large company for the first time, very large, publicly traded. And now we work with several of those, and our revenue went to 7 digits when we started working with the bigger companies. But it was a long experience that my wife was very helpful and stood by us while it happened. And a lot of friends said, "Oh, it's not going to work," but I guess maybe I'm just dogged or dumb, one of the two. But I felt that there was a need, and then when we started getting the big companies to hire a little company with expertise, um, it really it proved itself to be a valid process. But it took a long time.
You said something really insightful, which is the support that you had from your wife. And I too had that support from my wife. But I can tell you the entrepreneurial journey isn't just a journey for the entrepreneur. It's for their whole family, their spouse, their
Absolutely.
significant other, their children.
Yeah.
Because your lifestyle changes, especially if you come from a well-paid corporate job to an early stage startup entrepreneur. Things
Yeah.
have to change for a while.
And if your daughters are getting ready to go to college and things like that, where the financial situation is interesting.
Right.
But I guess I believe in nothing ventured, nothing gained. And so in retrospect, it was a really good idea, but there were a lot of times when it didn't seem like it was a really good idea.
I tell you, I'm reliving my early days as an entrepreneur because I started on the front end of the Great Recession, 2007. Didn't really,
Okay.
and so you're still standing. I'm still standing, and I think our entrepreneurs who can make it through those really lean times in the beginning, when most businesses fail anyway, and survive, I speaks a lot to your abilities and your business prowess. But let's talk about Edwards Global Services. What is it that your firm does?
Well, we basically help companies carefully decide why they want to take their business into other countries, when's the best time for them to do it in their company history, how should they go, partnerships, licenses, distributorships, in-country operations, where to go, and that's really the key, is where, I believe, is the number one, and then who to partner with. So help them project the revenues associated with the expenses of going into a country over time, and be sure there's a good chance for a positive ROI over time. So I started life as an engineer in the oil industry, and I'm very engineering focused and process focused. Processes, milestones, timelines, and that's really what we've been hired for, is that we have a system that works, and it works across sectors, and it works across countries. We've now worked in 35 countries since we started the business.
So let me unpack that a little bit, because there's so much we don't know, I would imagine, even for larger companies when they're looking to go outside of the U.S. or maybe the U.S. and Canada. I don't know, but when they're looking to go into a foreign market. So I'm glad to hear that you have a process. So help me to understand a little bit how when companies come to you, are they pretty well understanding what they want to do, or are they just at a high level saying, to grow, we need to go into other markets and other countries, and so we need to figure out how to do that? So where do you usually find them on that journey?
It's usually well, for small to medium sized companies, it's usually they're early into international or just thinking about it, and their board or their investors or their executives are trying to figure out whether it's a good thing to do. They've probably gotten inquiries over the internet about their product or service.
Right.
And and you can pretty well tell where those are going to come from, and they're trying to figure out where they ought to go, because they have limited resources. Okay, even the publicly traded companies have limited resources, but the medium-sized companies have limited people and money resources and time, and they have to decide whether expanding international is a good use of their time and money versus starting another type of project, maybe in the States, or a new manufacturing line or new product line. So they're trying to figure out what it means to go into another country from all different aspects. They're often worried about where they should go, and that means that we need to analyze how their particular brand and how it's going to fit into a country, what adaptations are needed, all those sorts of things, and then project for them what kind of revenues and expenses they're looking at. Because as I tell CEOs, there are always expenses associated with top line revenues. And you need to also look at political and economic situations in countries, of course. We've been doing that forever, but now today it's even more needed. And so it really is a whole lot of different pieces to a puzzle to figure out, once you think you ought to go, how, where, and when.
I'm sorry. I was just going to say,
and with whom, who is going to be your partner? That's key, because the partner is going to, in the country, is going to make your company either successful or not. Sorry to interrupt there.
No, that's okay. Because I just want to ask you a question, because business is complicated, regardless almost of its size. There's always challenges that the entrepreneur turns into the CEO. There's always challenges with the business, and scale can even make the business more complicated and complex in the decisions that the CEO has to make. But it sounds like, as you're talking about expanding into other countries, the amount of risk that they're taking on, if they don't really understand what they're doing, can really negatively impact the business. Not only don't you get the growth, but to your point, you could put a lot of cost into the business that doesn't result in commensurate revenue to cover that expense.
Well, that's exactly right. And one of the biggest concerns is you need to look at the legal and tax implications of entering a country, just to be sure that you can protect your brand and your investment, and what it's going to cost for you to make money in a country, because you have to pay taxes there and you have to pay taxes here, and sometimes it's double taxation. So the idea is to go into a country with eyes wide open, okay, looking at all the opportunities, but also the associated challenges, and looking at what the risk is that something might happen, because some countries have a higher risk that something might happen to your investment and your brand over time than others.
When a U.S. company goes into another country, do you find they are appreciating the differences in that market from a client customer perspective, or do they have to learn that? And is that why you're suggesting a partner to help them in that country is so important, Bill?
Well, one of the functions we do is with our team members around the world, we help with adaptation. What adaptation are you going to need for your brand when you go into a new country? What kind of things are you going to have to do to make it acceptable to the customers, because you want the customers to buy your product or service. And so it's important to do that up front, not do it after you get there, and because it's going to determine whether you can make money or not. And so I'm a huge believer, and I spent time in the big corporation in corporate planning, and I understand that although planning is something that used to be 5 years, then 3, now it's 6 months, but you need to do planning in advance to figure out what, like I said, Rick, the opportunities and the challenges, and make sure you know those with eyes wide open going in. And if you can do that, you've got a higher chance of success. And you can also determine country A, B, C, D, which one is where you want to put your resources.
So do you help B2B and B2C, or do you specialize in one or the other space?
Well, it's we work with restaurant brands, fitness brands, auto service, property management brands. So some of them are B2C, some are B2B. It really, no matter what you do, you still have to do the same upfront look at a country to find out whether there's a market for your brand, really not just because somebody contacts you and says, "Hey, we want to take your brand into our country." Well, that's not a risk management analysis, nor is it a financial analysis.
Right. But a lot of entrepreneurs are top line driven. So the opportunity to get into a whole new market, that sounds really enticing and sexy, Bill.
Which is why I go by my thing that I tell CEOs over time: there are associated costs with revenues.
Right.
So
And the complexities of all the new things. Plus, is your bank capable of handling and supporting you if you're doing international? There's a lot that we can unpack, but I did see that Jim Mayfield made a comment, and Haley, if you could bring that back onto the screen. It says, "We are lucky to have Bill Edwards as vice chair of the District Export Council of Southern California, based right here in good old Orange County." I added the good old, but he said here in Orange County. So, Bill, let's talk about what Jim talked about. What exactly is the Southern California District of the Export Council?
Well, the District Export Council is a national organization that is associated with the U.S. Department of Commerce. We are a group in Southern California, we're a group of 35 very diverse international business people that have been appointed by the Secretary of Commerce to assist the U.S. Commercial Service, the U.S. Department of Commerce. Jim Mayfield is the head of that here in Orange County, in helping small to medium-sized companies go global. And we're a pro bono organization. This is not part of Edwards Global Services. This is Bill Edwards giving back to the community and helping small companies and mid-sized companies that don't have internal resources across finance, legal, logistics, licensing, market analysis. Our 35 specialists that were appointed by the Secretary of Commerce here in Southern California are just incredibly diverse people who have already who have real regular jobs and are giving back to the community through helping the U.S. Commercial Service. So it's my executive team says that sometimes I seem to like that a lot more than I like my regular business, but I'll leave that where it is. But it can have a major impact on exporting, and I'm a huge believer in exporting because it helps our balance of payment deficit. And very often, Rick, small to medium-sized companies just really don't know what to do about exporting. They don't know where to go, how to get started, how to solve problems. And the District Export Council, in working with the U.S. Commercial Service, we provide feedback for the small companies primarily.
So I applaud you for investing time in supporting the District Export Council. But it sounds like to me, Bill, you're actually giving away for free the expertise that others are willing to pay dearly for. And so it's almost like you're working for a nonprofit, although it's the federal government program.
The District Export Council of Southern California is a nonprofit. It's a separate nonprofit. It's not part of the It's not part of the U.S. government.
Okay.
But yes, I think you could say that. But
okay.
We're not doing complete projects for a company. We're giving them advice on certain things, like, what do you need to do to enter China when it comes to intellectual property? What are the challenges with logistics through the two major ports? There are two ports here in Southern California are responsible for 43% of all imports and exports in the country. And so the District Export Council has been very involved in port issues over the last couple of years for some reason. As you can imagine.
Right. That's so that sounds like an invaluable service for middle market companies who don't have the resources inside to take this initiative on by themselves, and to have 35 experts who have it's amazing to me that there are 35 people who have domain knowledge that these companies need to leverage to successfully take their business abroad. That just speaks to the complexity of
we're not in the case of Edwards Global Services, we're doing a project. We're project going into certain countries with all phases. For the District Export Council, we're called on by Jim's team to answer questions and give advice on particular issues that companies are having. Let's say, for example, we had one recently where a cosmetic manufacturer in Santa Ana was going into the Middle East and wanted to know how to handle packaging, and so there was somebody in the deck that understood packaging for places like the European Union and the Middle East, which is very different than it is here in the United States. And so we were able to give advice on that sort of thing. So that's the kind of thing that comes up. Or there may be a legal issue that comes up on a country, and we've got specialists that are international lawyers that are in the deck, District Export Council.
So let's bring it back to Edwards Global Services, because I'm
Thank
wondering.
you. I appreciate that.
Yeah, no, I'm wondering, are there hotter areas, better areas right now of the world that you're seeing kind of in a generic sense for businesses who are in the U.S. that are looking to expand? And if so, where might those be?
Well, actually, the pandemic has made a huge difference in that, the answer to that question, because especially here in Orange County in the West Coast, prior to the pandemic, most of the exports were either to the south, to Mexico, or to the west, to Asia. Okay. And although to the south is still very strong and growing, by the way, with the U.S., the new NAFTA, USMCA agreement, which is, by the way, was designed to help small to medium-sized businesses. The NAFTA program was only for big businesses. But going west now has been a challenge because the economies in Asia are still coming out of pandemic. They're, like a China, Indonesia, Philippines, Malaysia, Thailand, they're still recovering. Their economies are. So they're not seeing as much export from the US right now as Europe is and the Middle East is. And so right now, the booming countries for US exports, new exports now, not what was already established, is into places like the European Union, the UK, Middle East. So those are markets that are very robust for our clients right now. I'm spending most of my time in Europe and the Middle East, although I'm on my way to Australia and New Zealand later this week.
So you, in your role, you have a sense for sort of the global economy by region and what's happening. And so I'm wondering, I just have a curiosity about, you talked about the Middle East, but are you seeing much opportunity on the continent of Africa for U.S. businesses in any way, shape, or form? It's
a challenge. The challenge is multiple. The economies are a challenge. In most of our brands, we need to see that we need to be able to define a consumer that is willing to and able to pay for a product or service. Okay. And that's a challenge with most of Africa. There are political challenges in Africa. For a number of years, South Africa was a good market. Right now, it's got a lot of challenges. It will come back. And if you go to Northern Africa, Egypt is booming. Egypt is a country full of cranes. It seems like that's more buildings and malls. Like it's just that's not the generally known feeling about Egypt in the news. But if you go and visit, you'll see that it's very busy. So on the north, you've got Egypt, Morocco, and in the southern part of the market, you've got Kenya and South Africa that are places that have good rule of law. This is important, Rick. You have to have rule of law so you can protect intellectual property, and so that your contract you make with someone in a country is viable. If something goes wrong, which it does periodically, have to be ready for that. So Africa is still a challenge with consumer spending capability and legal issues. But I think it's not a market that can be ignored because it's huge.
Right.
And there is the key in my experience is middle class.
Yes.
Is there a middle class consumer?
Yes.
That's what's happened in Asia. You look at places like the Philippines, Indonesia, China, Thailand. The growth of the middle class is where that growth of consumer is, and that's where we can sell our products and services.
That's a great point. Thank you for making that, Bill. I completely can understand that and agree with it. Let's talk about Edwards Global Services in the future. I love having you entrepreneurs because there's always something else you could do or you want to do.
Uh,
Can you describe your vision for the firm in the future?
yeah, well, I've got to go back a little bit because the pandemic was a change for us because our business works when we can go to countries
Mm.
and do market research and find partners and get our clients connected up, and the clients can travel to the country to see the business environment, meet the partners. Well, that all stopped in April of 2020, and so the most of the clients we have were trying to keep their business going. We work with a number of restaurant brands in the States, and during COVID, they had their own challenges locally here. We're not looking so much into new markets, new investment. Okay. And in the countries overseas, the people who might be investors were trying to keep their business going. So people were more inward looking. And so what we did is we expanded into doing a lot more market research. And now that was about 5% of our revenue. Now it's more than 40%. And that helped us keep the business going because we have a team on the ground in 27 countries that works virtual for us, and they were needing things to do. And so we were monitoring what was going on country by country, which gave us a feel, by the way, for when countries were coming out of COVID economically rather than what was in the news.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One of those, by the way, was Spain. It was considered in the news to not be growing, but we knew for a fact that there were a lot of people looking for new investment early in 21. And so we started working back in Spain and in Italy. And then even though those countries were incredibly impacted by COVID, they came out fairly quickly because they got a high level of vaccinations, okay, in the 80%. So we expanded our market research. We started a bi-weekly global business update newsletter, which comes out every other Tuesday and now goes to 1,500 people in 20 countries. I didn't think it was going to get to be that big.
Wow.
We added more alliances with other similar firms like in Europe and in Asia to expand our network to be able to do business when the economies started coming back. And by last September, when we started traveling again internationally, we were a different company. We were more fine-tuned, even though I was an engineer and thought I had all my processes done. Things got a little too good, and then we needed to fine-tune. So today we're more of a full-service going global firm, and we have more resources on the ground around the world, and we have more market research that we've been doing, and of course our reports that we're giving to our clients and our network. So I see that the market research to continue to grow. We've added countries, expertise in countries. Like I said, we fine-tuned our process to be more financially efficient during COVID, okay, which is now paying off. We approaching our clients in a whole different approach on how we're getting paid and investment by the clients, and they love it. And so I'm cautiously optimistic, knock on wood. I'm cautiously optimistic about the future. I will say that before COVID, 60% of our business was in Asia. I think it'll probably go to 40% by 2023, but we're far more ready to be in Europe and the Middle East than we were before. And we're also ready to go back into the Americas in 2023 as those economies, which we watch on a daily basis, come back stronger.
I love you entrepreneurs because you have to pivot from time to time. And usually it's an externality that forces that. And COVID was certainly that. Congratulations on creating new revenue streams or enhancing your revenue streams in the business. And really, after all these years, being willing to redesign some of your service offerings. That's Rick, lesson to be learned.
I appreciate you saying that, but really we had to. Okay.
Necessity is the mother of invention.
To continue to exist, we had to.
And, so if someone would like to learn more about your business or connect with you, Bill, how do you suggest they do that?
Well, they can contact me at bedwards@edwardsglobal.com, bedwards@edwardsglobal.com. We have a fairly robust website, edwardsglobal.com, Edwards Global, one word. And then they can read our newsletter or blog, which is at geowizard.biz, B-I-S, geowizard.biz.
Well, that's great. Thank you for giving so many points of contact and opportunities for people to connect with you. I thoroughly enjoyed our time, and thank you for what you do for large companies and also those middle market firms here in Orange County. I appreciate it.
Well, it's a pleasure to be with you. I really appreciate it for helping me dissect my entrepreneurial experience.
Yeah, it was fun. And I'd like to thank the audience. You've been a part of Orange County's longest running business talk show. Bill's episode was episode number 1371 in our catalog. If you're an Orange County entrepreneur and you'd like to tell your story, then connect with me here on LinkedIn. I'm Rick, R-I-C, Franzi, F-R-A-N-Z-I. That's my website too, rickfranzi.com. And until the next time we have a chance to be together, I hope all of your business decisions will move your company in a positive direction.